What does a thriving ecosystem look like?
Thriving ecosystem is where ideas are nurtured. There is a handholding for those ideas. When I look at the global landscape, it's not just about handholding of ideas, but looking at the current scenario, the product life cycle is not that long. You don't have much time to think about how your product will shape.
Do you think regional education and especially regional educational institutes can actually contribute to the startup ecosystem?
In India alone, we have 117 unicorns, but how many of them are solving local problems? When I did startup, I used to read a lot about how China developed their ecosystem. Japanese were able to create entrepreneurial ecosystem. They were solving problems at the local level. I mean, they used to have competitions at local level. The problem which we have become complacent in that.
What's that one cultural or structural aspect of India's startup ecosystem that other countries could learn from?
I think it is time for us to be good storytellers. We do good things, but we don't talk about it. The way Tatas do it, every employee is a good storyteller. Harish Bhatt has written so many books, beautiful books on Tata.
If you had the power to modify one policy today that would impact startups emerging from educational institutions, what would it be?
Really, we need to think about how we are utilizing the human resources and providing them that feedback of what their value or worth is. Because giving some grades, giving some numbers does not make sense. Every other student gets 100 on 100 today. How you differentiate that?
Should we emulate proven models? Or do we pioneer new paths? Is it more strategic for Indian startups to build on tested concepts or to dive into fresh experiments?
It's an interesting question, and I'm glad you have asked this question, and I'm sad why it's coming at the end because
where curiosity meets creativity, education becomes the spark that ignites innovation.
Look for the silver lining whenever a cloud appears in the blue.
Hello and welcome to Between Us. Make every conversation count. Today is a very special episode because we've just started the Bharat Startup Series, and this episode is a part of the Bharat Startup Series. And today I'm in conversation with Mr. Umesh Rathod, who is a mentor, innovation manager at AICTE, Ministry of Education, Government of India, researcher, and startup author. In today's episode, we're going to talk about two pertinent topics: education and startups in India. Umesh has a rich background in fostering startup innovation and a strong advocate for STEAM education. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I hope each and every one of you, whoever you are watching this episode, be a student, a budding entrepreneur, a policymaker, an incubator, or an accelerator, I hope all of you have something to take away from this. Umesh, thank you for being on the show.
thank you for having me, Santoshji, and the whole team of Between Us.
So, all right, Umesh, we begin with our first segment, What Matters. And this is about what truly matters in the startup ecosystem. I'm sure you will agree that education plays a very important role when it comes to building a startup ecosystem. So I have a three-part question for you. One is, first is, what does a thriving ecosystem look like?
Okay.
Second is, how do you think educational institutions, especially colleges and universities, how they can contribute to this growth of the ecosystem? And how can we redefine the role of failure in our education system that cultivates resilience and risk-taking mindset for entrepreneurship?
Thank you. These are some really close questions to me because, I really ponder upon these questions, and being part of the startup ecosystem for last 14 years, I could, try to give it a a flavor from my current role with the Ministry of Education.
Mhm.
My past role as the mentor with a couple of institutions like CI, NEN, Entrepreneurship Cell, IIT Bombay, and Lean Campus Startups, the initiative which I began. So a thriving ecosystem for me is where ideas are nurtured,
Okay.
and there is a hand-holding for those ideas. And when I look at the global landscape, it's not just about hand-holding of ideas, but having support systems which help people pivot their ideas for rapid prototyping.
Okay.
Looking at the current scenario, the product life cycle is not that long.
Okay.
Suppose you are launching an XYZ product today. It will evolve within next 6 months. So you don't have much time to think about how your product, will shape. I mean, like, you have to be really on the toes to come up with something which is unique if you're thinking of, doing something 0 to 1. Or maybe for that matter, 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. So a thriving ecosystem will be which nurtures that idea, helps in pivoting and coming up with a solution for the people at large, or the entrepreneur is able to come up with solution which solves that problem and is able to evolve to make it sustainable.
Okay.
When we talk about the role of academic institutions, so there are a lot of initiatives happening at the government level to start with. If I talk about Ministry of Education Innovation Cell, we start with the Institution Innovation Council.
Okay.
So these started developing over the last 6-7 odd years. So every institute which is affiliated with AICTE, for example, All India Council Technical Education, is having an IIC in their premises. So there's a president, there's a convener, and there are 70 plethora activities, exhaustive activities, I should say, for a year-long, activities within that institution. So be it impact lecture series, be it doing a boot camp, be it organizing a hackathon within that campus, having an investment network coming in, having demo days and all. So it's 15,000 IICs across the country today.
Okay.
You can imagine, multiplied by those 70 activities, you can see the kind of scale. Then these IICs also, take part in conducting initiatives like Smart India Hackathon, which is, I'm really proud to say and talk about it, because it's world's largest hackathon initiative. And last year, around 50,000 plus teams participated, out of which there are multiple rounds, and then final, as Smart India Hackathon finale takes place. The other initiative is Kapila, which is named after Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, where we fund the institutions for filing patents. So they get kind of a reimbursement if they have filed patents. So 2022-2023, there were 23,000 patents filed by academicians. I mean, like, granted patents, which went to 1 lakh patents granted in 2023-2024. So you can imagine the jump.
So the process has also become a lot faster now.
Yes, the process has become a lot faster. There is awareness. So my role as an innovation manager currently with the Ministry of Education is to help, create IPs, and also to take that IPs to realize into startups for licensing, for commercialization, like tech transfer.
Okay.
So that is part of that value chain, right? This is another aspect. You're not only doing startups, but you're also creating, patents, and maybe if you're not, so if an academician files a patent, so there's a concept like every entrepreneur is innovator, but every innovator is not entrepreneur. So we want to make them aware that you can sell those patents. So we're bringing industry connect. We are bringing investor connect who can buy these patents. But here the problem is that we don't find MSME connect with the academia. So that's where I think we need to really work upon, where MSCs can, MSMEs can really look up to these ideas or the patented technologies and buy it from the academicians, or the other way around, they co-create with them.
I think co-creating with them would make a lot of sense, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely, because it's a win-win situation for both. You know what you're creating and you already know there's a market, so commercialization becomes easy. And MSME and academicians know what they are getting into, rather than finding, it would be more need-based, right? As in startup, we first try to find the need and try to match it, rather than creating something and pushing it across the table. The other aspect within the ecosystem, or what entrepreneurship related activities we do, is the innovation design entrepreneurship boot camps.
Okay.
This we do for school teachers as well and college students from across, India. Recent one was held, which I was part of, was at Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar. There were 300 students from Jammu Kashmir to Kerala, from Gujarat to Assam. So the best part is that they are sharing ideas, not only sharing ideas, there's peer learning which is happening, peer learning about their, culture, about how they do things over there. And, there are good case studies with Smart in the Hackathon, where students from 2 different states came together to establish a startup. So that, cross-pollination of ideas from different communities is also taking place as we speak within the academic institutions. Having said that, we have, innovation ambassador program. We have training for them, right? We have idea labs. So the idea lab is basically at the heart of prototyping.
Okay.
The question which you asked, right? What is an ideal or the thriving startup ecosystem? And I always look up to Israel, right, or Silicon Valley. But when you dig deeper into how Israel ecosystem has developed, is how they prototype their ideas, and they focus on rapid prototyping. And to do rapid prototyping, you need to have fabrication labs near you, like 3D printers, CNC cutters, CNC machines, and whatnot. Right. So the Idea Lab is provided by the ministry. We have around 85 Idea Labs across the country. 6 of them is within my region in Maharashtra. And this year, around 150 Idea Labs will be provided.
Okay.
So these Idea Labs are open to any citizen of the country.
How does an Idea Lab work?
So basically, it is established within a engineering college usually, because they have that expertise to maintain those tools and machines. And then anyone coming to the Idea Lab, they get the resources for free in terms of human. But whatever the cost is involved pertaining to executing certain thing, maybe they just have to pay for that, which they will eventually have to pay anywhere, in any fabrication institution. But the interesting part is that these Idea Labs have helped students for competitions like ISRO Challenge, where you have to create a Mars rover or lunar rover. And they have excelling in this, initiative like anything. I'm like, from their third year projects, I'm like, it happens in the third year, but having Idea Lab within the institution from first year, they are testing their whatever they are learning in the classroom coming to the Idea Lab. So there are drones which are there. There are rovers which are the students kind of building. And it's a great place for like-minded peoples to come and brainstorm.
Sure. Absolutely.
So this is another part of it. So I've answered like one of the questions related to the thriving ecosystem. I've talked a bit about academia.
The universities and
universities. And now the thing is, we have incubation centers within the university. I know a couple of incubation centers which are developed by industry, like Magic, which is in Sambhajinagar, Chhatrapati Sambhajinagar, and we have lots of TBIs, technology business incubators, within the academic institutions. So in Maharashtra alone, we have around 100 plus incubation centers today. and they are housing around 100 plus 50 to 100 plus startups roughly. And these are
And these incubation centers are within colleges and
within colleges.
Okay.
And they have both student-led startups as well as faculty-led startups.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Right. So the ecosystem has evolved. There was a time when faculties were only known for teaching, the syllabus and, grading the students. But I've met over the last 6 months in this role, I've met a couple of, incubated startups from faculties who are making few crores by selling their products to, organizations like Kirloskar of the world, and they are making UPAs and transformers. So this is happening in tier 2 cities as we speak, right? So there's a lot of thing happening in the space. Maharashtra State Innovation Society at the state level is also supporting these initiatives along with the central schemes like Startup India Seed Fund. And it has become easy. To give you a gist, there was a time when I did my startup way back in 2010. We did not had any, such support system.
Correct.
We did not had incubation center. In fact, recently I had a session with the incubator CEOs, another discussion with them, a panel on them, and I just floated this question: when was the last time? Or sorry, when was the first time you heard this term incubation center in startup? Obviously, we know about the medicine. I mean, like in hospitals. And one of the incubator CEO says he came from abroad after studies 4-5 years back. He came to know about it. Few people mentioned it was way back in 2013-14, right? And that job was not created that time. Now that exists. So we have incubation center CEO, we have incubation manager, we have, interns and all. So that ecosystem is, again created, and there are new opportunities which have come. Now, the role of incubation center becomes very important in academia, because anyone who has an idea, given the timeline of faculties running here and there to admin work, as well as the role of faculty of teaching, maybe they also have to publish, right? They are compelled to publish and also grade them and all. Incubators can really listen to what students have to say. So if they have an idea, the academicians can connect them directly to the incubation, and that's the thought process I've been pushing around. If you don't have time, you just connect your students to a nearby incubation center. And I'll just tell you how the ecosystem has developed, the value chain which academicians are creating today. There was a time when TPO cell did not exist in academia. And if you ask like your parents, they had to run from place to place taking their CV in hand for applying for a job, and multiple rounds of interviews, waiting there for hours. Now TPO cell exists. And it's thriving. Like even before you enter an academic institution, you see a wonderful board with placements, announced over there, right? And here's the thing: there have been so many alumni entrepreneurs from that institution. We always, I always tell them that have a different board with those photographs, with their company signages, mention that, this option also exists. True. Because it's more intrinsic and psychological. As student, you remember when teacher used to ask you, what do you really want to become? This is a very typical question.
Yeah.
And every student, I think, once in a life has to go through that question. It's a very trivial question. And I don't know what tells you, what bias comes into place, but you always will give a name which the profession which is applauded more.
Yes.
You will not say something which people, don't oblige or would not anticipate. You will always say a profession which is applauded.
It's also ingrained into our minds, at one point in time, even through parents, that you become an engineer, you become a doctor, you become this. You don't talk about applied arts or liberal arts. You don't talk about other areas.
Absolutely. And the thing is that it because it is intrinsic and psychological to do, we need to celebrate it.
True.
So that's why we say that, and in academia, within 365 days, I think any academic institution works 200 days. 104 days go in Saturdays and Sundays, remaining 1 or 2 months in academia, exams and other aspects. So 200 days students come in and out. So when they're entering the campus, at least they see that, okay, I have an option to take up a job or I can become an entrepreneur. So, that thought process is changing. And other part is, if I have an idea, if I'm a student today, right? And this is for all the students listening to this podcast. You just have to create a 10-slide deck, create a business model canvas, put it in the slide, reach out to the incubation center and pitch your idea. And if you are, invited by the incubation center to get incubated, maybe register your startup and pitch for the Startup India Seed Fund by registering on DPIT platform, and you get 20 lakh rupees grant. I'm not that talking about whether grant is good or not, but that option is available today. And this is for all the Indian, startup founders.
True.
So this is what is happening in, academia. This is what big shift is happening. And I think it's going to go upward. 1 lakh plus startups within the ecosystem, 117 plus unicorns. So, things are getting.
And to the final of the three parts, third part was, how can we redefine the role of failure
Absolutely
in our education system,
Yeah.
which can help cultivate resilience and a risk-taking mindset for entrepreneurship.
Correct. So I have a different take on this, Santosh. I think risk-taking and resiliency cannot be taught.
Okay.
This is very intrinsic. If you have a mindset towards what kind of mindset you have towards learning, because when you have a mindset towards learning, you are ready to fail. You can give multiple tries. And that's how you have learned all the things. Maybe you have learned cycling. You learn by falling. It was not that you just, kick the pedal and you were there. If you are learning swimming, maybe, you had those moments. So it is to do with the learning mindset. Having said that, in our Upanishads, in our Vedas, we never talked about success or failure. Lord Krishna, like Krishna Bhagwan, tells Arjuna during the war of Mahabharata, karmanyevadhikaratse ma phaleshu kadachana. Focus on the karma and experience. Because I feel everything is experience. What is success today might be a failure tomorrow. What is a failure today might be a success tomorrow. But when you move beyond these two thought process, you kind of are ready into the zone to at least give it a try.
True.
And then you don't think beyond, you don't think that what society will think about you. So becoming that, elephant walking down the street who is not bothered what people around him, have notion about. That thought process comes breaking this colonial mindset of success and failure. If you really want to do something big, you need to think beyond that. And I think that is what we as an academic institutions need to imbibe students with, which was a long lost thought process. Which happened due to the colonization pertinently, because jobs, academic institutions were created for job seekers.
True.
In a nutshell. And now we want to break those clutches. For that, we need to have that thought process coming in again. Other part of it, as I mentioned, resiliency and risk-taking cannot be taught. Why I said that? Because I have, interacted with so many academicians and I've been there, myself. You find crazy students. So in academic setting, you have 4 kind of students. One who are there for job. So I, giving an example, I had a friend of mine who used to read mathematics in the microwave devices classroom. So he was focused. I need good score. I want to get a good job. You cannot do anything about him. You cannot tell him that, okay, there's nothing like job. You do a startup. He is very focused. So he will eventually want to land over there. There's other kind who is for, further studies. They might not be that, ingrained into ranking, but definitely want hand-holding and support for that. So clearing those JRE scores or going abroad for further studies. There's a third kind who are maybe nuisance creator, or as I say, outstanding students, who are always standing out of the class because of some kind of punishment. So they need some different set of methods to engage.
Hmm.
Maybe
Hmm.
they are not falling into the same learning process as others. They need maybe hands-on activities. Maybe they are more into learning by doing. I really like this TEDx speech by Sir Ken Robinson, and I was really inspired. When I thought of giving a TED talk or TEDx talk, I always looked up to his videos
Mhm.
and his thought process.
Hmm.
Creativity and imagination. This is something which you really need to think out of the box.
Sure.
You cannot templatize it. And for not having templatized setting, you need activities which help students to think beyond. So we need to engage them in those activities. Like we have Smart India Hackathon, we have Innovation Design Entrepreneurship Bootcamp. These are some places where they can be engaged. And the fourth kind, which students don't have exactly the clarity what they really want to do.
True.
So they also need some kind of a mentoring, some kind of a hand-holding over there, right? Having said that, students who are backbenchers, so this has been the feedback from the faculties. I don't know how many of you will resonate this thought. Students who are backbenchers do well. They might not score, great marks. But this has been a feedback that a lot of student entrepreneurs came from the backbenchers, or the people who were not that attentive or good at. They were average students. And we want to support. We need to support them. Resiliency and risk taking, they come with that naturally.
I think when we should also be very careful about using the word failure. I would rather say that there are steps of you are learning. Basically, it's a phase of
Absolutely.
learning.
It's an experience.
Yeah.
So for me, the whole life is an experience on a personal note. See, the world was there even before we came for 4.5 billion years. World will be there for next 4.5 billion years. So what we are having is just experience.
True.
Whether we are successful or failure, that does not matter at all. Right? After 100, 200, 500 odd years,
Yeah.
Who will know who was Santosh and Umesh?
Yes. And I think, I kind of agree when I read this question, when I wrote up this question, I realized that why I use the word risk taking and resilience is that maybe what is a perceived failure is probably an experience. And sometimes when things don't go our way, we call it a failure, or we see it as a perceived failure. That can either build you even more stronger, or it can probably break you. So I think people, when you look at the term or when you hear the term failure, I feel that in some way, if you are strong enough, you become resilient and you want to fight the odds.
And you become resilient by going from failure to failure.
Yes.
I'm like, I in my book Startup Theories, Examples and Activities, I talk about this. One of the attitude or one of the parameters or one of the attributes of a successful entrepreneur is to be resilient and risk taker. Or instead, I would like to call it being mitigating risk.
True.
So successful entrepreneurs are the ones who mitigate their risk. They are not maybe risk takers. They are good at mitigating the risk. So instead of talking about risk taking, we should say how you mitigate it. For
True.
example, jumping from the cliff is risky, but when you do a bungee jump,
Yeah.
you have a rope tied to you.
True. True.
Right? So how you go down with it and what your perceived notion is, that is what is important. And in academia, these people who create nuisance, even if faculty says I might fail you or you will get less marks, they are not bothered. They pass with a grace, or studying for a little time. But they are multitaskers, they are risk takers, they are resilient, they are doing many things at a given point
True.
of time. So
True.
they are having that natural setup. So you cannot make a donkey into a horse, but you can make the horse run faster, or a donkey to do work efficiently maybe. So I think that should be the notion.
Okay. As a diverse country, as we are, do you think regional education, and especially regional educational institutes, can actually contribute to the startup ecosystem? And because then they cater to the local needs and cultures.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think
And do you have some examples?
examples. Okay. Okay. So I think regional education can add a lot of value to the startup ecosystem. Given today with startups solving global problems. In India alone, we have 117 unicorns, but how many of them are solving local problems? I'm like, and in US we have 91 startups which are unicorns founded by Indian origin, entrepreneurs. So that's a big number. It tells us that we are problem solvers in a nutshell. It's in our genes.
True.
When you talk about localized setting, it is really important to find or mentor the students who can connect to these problems. See, at the nutshell, at the heart of problem solving is being empathetical.
True.
If you're not empathetical, you're not understanding the problem in the right sense. A doctor who is empathetical. I mean, I don't know how many times you have been hospitalized, but if you remember a doctor who was very empathetical and understood, what you're going through and captured that very essence and was able to address that issue, you feel relieved. Any of your friend, right, or who understands you or comforts you or shows empathy towards you, right? Maybe your parents for that matter also. But when you're a problem solver, right, you are not connected to that person directly or indirectly. But if you're localized, if you are coming from that community, if you're coming from that region, you understand the ecosystem better. And then you are able to address that problem in an efficient way. So having that regional initiatives will work wonders, I think, for India, because a lot of problems can be solved locally. That handholding needs to be there. And I think through that local problem, we can create global solutions also.
Absolutely.
I have an example. So I read a lot about startup ecosystem across the world. When I did startup, I used to read a lot about how China developed their, ecosystem, or how Japanese were able to create a wonderful, what we can say, entrepreneurial ecosystem, and became number one in, electronics and semiconductors. So when I read more about it, I came to know they were solving problems at the local level. I mean, like, they used to have competitions at local level. The problem which we have become complacent in that. For example, recently we had Navratri festival, we had Ganesh festival. Right now we will be we had Deepavali, and we had societal competitions which we do, right, at society level. Where we have singing, dance, and all those competitions, but we don't have something related to technical activities. I'm like, if you talk at a given point today in India, almost 30 to 40% are engineers, roughly, especially tier 1 and metro cities. Now, many solutions can come from the community. That was a thought process in Japan. I mean, like, they used to give problem statements for small robotic competitions, and they used to come up with new solutions, and that got pivoted, in multiple, ideas and, patents and, new solutions, which captured larger ecosystem. They created that. So I think we need to go beyond having these simple competitions, also add the flavor of tech and problem solving within those community events and activities. This will also help us to preserve our culture and also address the problem, creating that problem solving mindset, which we are missing because everything is got digital. Everyone is doing their own, but the disconnect which exists can be bridged. So I think that is, one example which comes to my mind. And I think Zoho is a great example, being localized. I mean, like, no, it's not a local problem, but I really like the fact that he is situated in, a village, not in a metro, and he's able to, run his startup from there. Given digital transformation, which India has seen with 5G and now 6G coming in, the speed of internet, raising the bar, I think a lot of things can be done at local level, uh, where you don't need to commute a lot, and you have all the resources available with you.
So, another important aspect when it comes to education and startup is, of course, STEAM. So, I have a two-part question for you, Umesh. One is, why is STEAM education pivotal for India's future, particularly within the startup space? And the second part to that question is, how can design thinking and global innovation models be integrated into STEAM to foster the entrepreneurial mindset?
Oh, that's a heavy question, but I would like to answer it. Okay. So, yeah, for the audience, STEAM is basically science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths. Uh, for year on year, our focus has been about STEM. So we have great IITs, but we have, not given that much preference to NIDs or, art. And I believe it is really important that we, give them that due, what we can say, value in the ecosystem. Now, if you ask me why, when I participated first time in a hackathon ever, it was in 2014. It was conducted by MIT Media Lab USA, and I was part of that 5-day hackathon series conducted at Wellinkers, Mumbai. Now, the whole idea of bringing art into the STEM is because we build good solutions, but they are not aesthetical. Aesthetics are missing. So we create a solution that has been my personal, what we can say, feedback, which I see startups, and with us also as a startup, when I did a startup, we also faced that issue that we were not able to create aesthetical designs. Like we were having, we were dealing with developing STEM labs in schools. But when you talk about creating robots like Lego, Lego is a global competitor. But still, I don't know what stopped us from doing it. But aesthetics is where we miss out on a big time. Having said that, throughout the journey in engineering, we miss out on the part of how a design will look or how our product will finally look like, because we focus on the internal part of it. For example, you are building a product, okay, or an app. You will see that the algorithm works better, but when it comes to UX or UI, you need to have a sense of how the art, how people using it will feel. Maybe the color, maybe the design of it, right? The whole aesthetic around it. Having arts as a part of STEM, adding it to the STEM and having a focus on that would really be a game changer in this sense. Because we can create best of the products, but we want something which appeals to the new age generation, right? And not only that, maybe going cross border and appealing to the larger masses.
Sure.
And I think it has to do with, we haven't seen it in that way, because what all things can we teach in academic setting? Like there has been also the limitations. Because you have so many courses to be done. I also see that finance is something which is not taught to engineers.
True.
And when we look at business models coming from even IITs, they keep the finance aspect vacant. I mean, like they talk about the product, they talk about the market, they also maybe have a gist of the business model canvas. But in that business model canvas, finance part is nowhere clearly mentioned. So likewise, in the pitch, they talk about it, but when you look at design aesthetics, right, and that's where the patents also come, because a lot has to do. Patent has to do a lot with the designs also, like design patents. So that aspect can also be propagated, and it will be advantageous for students who are building solutions. Now, when we look at global ecosystem, right, and connecting art, because everything is art finally.
True.
We ourselves is an art of God, I believe.
Mhm.
And when you look at the trees or plants or mountains or sun or whatever, it is a work of art, and it is really important for us to understand that we need to come up with a notion where we give due value for having this education as well with the STEM. Like having science, technology, engineering, maths is okay, but art is also very relevant today. One logo, one design can make a larger difference for and tell a different story altogether about what your startup is, right? Which your product might not be able to tell.
Okay.
Right. So that's my notion about a bit about what art can do in a nutshell. And yeah, what was the other part of it?
The other part was how can design thinking and global innovation models be integrated into STEAM to foster entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah. So design thinking is at the heart of entrepreneurship. Without it, I think problem solving is not worthwhile. So talking about global business models, I think we now have enough Indian business models in place. Obviously, we had a time where we were doing copy paste models from abroad, but I think they are exhausted abroad now. You know, there is nothing great which has come out of Silicon Valley after Apple. I don't know if you have examples, you can correct me, but here we are at the cusp of a change. I think next great solutions, next great innovative ideas are going to come from our country.
Um, do you think STEAM education is important, um, you know, um, to include ethical training given the impact of tech startups on the society?
Yeah, having STEAM education or not, I think we need to be ethical.
Sure.
And it should be part of the curricula. So, given the tech startups and the way the world is moving further with technologies like blockchain and and the upcoming cyber crimes which we are seeing and all, I think ethics should be part of the curriculum. They need to be taught to the students. When you talk about ethics, in the Indian context, it has been very clear. Problem solving is more related to people and what they're going through. But given the new notion, the new age technologies which are coming in, I think ethics is something which has to be part of the curriculum.
Okay. I have a two-part question. One is, of course, the fact that how do you think public and private sector, how can they collaborate to boost STEAM initiatives so that they can align with startup growth? That's one part of it. The other part of it is, what are the core skills that make STEAM education so crucial for developing entrepreneurial potential?
So I'll give an example about, it's an interesting question, by the way. I don't think so any initiative should be, underlooked or taken up without triple LX model. I need to have industry, I need to have government, I need to have people, taking part, or
Sure.
the academia
Yeah.
taking part in it.
Yeah.
Having said that, Idea Lab is a great example, right? When we floated this Idea Lab concept at ministry level, I'm giving this example because it's a wonderful example where public, government and academia, industry and government came together. So we floated any institution who wants to have an Idea Lab, you can fill up a form. We get thousands of applications, out of which there was this institute called Kolhapur Institute of Technology, College of Engineering. So the need was that the government will support them 55 lakh rupees to establish an Idea Lab. 45 lakhs they have to create as a fund, and they need to have their own space where they can establish it. So we kept it as an option. They can go and collaborate with industry to do it, and they did. and beautifully. So their Idea Lab is called Mayura Idea Lab, which is funded by AICTE. 45 lakhs came from Mayura Steelworks,
Okay.
which is again their CSR
Mhm.
thing. And now that Idea Lab is thriving within Kolhapur region. So it is directly connected to STEAM because students come there. They are not only utilizing those machines, 3D printers. They are making beautiful aesthetic, products out of it.
Hmm. Hmm.
For example, the miniatures.
Hmm.
For example, the trophies which are given for various competitions using CNC machines and cutter. 3D printed trophies and miniatures. Drones coming out of 3D printed technology.
Hmm.
So they have 3D. They have a 3D camera where they put any component, they map it, and use a 3D printer to print it out.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I think any initiative to do with STEAM, because for STEAM you need a lot of investments. So doing small investment is not a right option. If you need to have the best machines.
True.
So to do that, it makes important for industry to collaborate. Now, not only about STEAM education, when you talk about research, right? Industry has been at the back, what we can say, at the backdrop because industry does not invest much in research in India.
And that has been a general criticism of our ecosystem that we don't invest enough into research and development.
And we don't trust our academic institutions. I mean, something to do with long-term vision of the company.
And also, I think we've kind of, I mean, it exists everywhere, but if you look at it, we are so dependent on select few institutions. And I'm sure there are other institutions beyond the IITs and the IIMs which do provide quality faculty, quality education, enough research, right?
Absolutely.
And somehow we don't seem to focus on them or talk about them.
Absolutely. I mean, innovation can come from anywhere. And it is really important to see and cater to it because, see, industry wants solutions tomorrow.
Yes.
So they need to start early. My suggestion is that if any student is going from India abroad for a PhD program, all those PhDs are funded by industry.
Right.
We don't have that ecosystem here. I mean, how many PhDs in India are which are funded on projects funded by institutions which are coming from industry? So, if I'm going to any university in Europe, for example, and you'll have thousands of, PhD opportunities coming in, these are funded by the industry. Yeah. So there is a mentor appointed from the university who is also getting paid by that industry. And that whole 4 or 5 years they spend on researching, on that topic, which that industry benefits from. So we are not yet looking at opening those doors. I don't know why. What's stopping us? We need to create those avenues where industry collaborates with the academic institutions to co-create programs, research, co-create patents, think about commercialization, and I think it's a wonderful collaboration. Right? And I think government can play the role of creating those policies around it.
Yeah, I think, and I always believe that somehow, that government's role should be that of being a nudger, just push, check all the compliances, and rest should not be coming in between. That's where a startup ecosystem thrives. All right, so we come to the final part of What Matters segment, and what better person than you, because this is about policy, this is about advocacy, and this is about community engagement. Question to you is, what policies do you think are necessary to support the education sector in producing more startup ready graduates?
Okay. I don't think so. It has to do directly only with policy. There are too many things, strings attached to it. For startups, as we talked about giving value to arts in STEM. Accepting that some of the students might focus on faster problem solving, maybe they are not, grading them on different level altogether. And, accepting their resiliency, risk-taking attitude which they bring on the table and appreciating that. So they can excel in that. So nothing can be looked through the lens of only good marks or percentage for starts.
Okay.
Second, I think the incubation centers
Mhm.
can, be connected to the institutions where so like we have mobile towers which capture a range. We have an incubation center for say 10-15 kilometers each,
Okay.
where anyone, within that vicinity can go and approach the incubation center. And if we cannot have incubation center, we need to have a concept called incubator in residence. And that's what I always talk about. Like we have entrepreneur in residence in corporates. We need to have incubator in residence in academia. A faculty who is responsible to connect the startups or ideators from their institution to the incubators nearby until that ecosystem develops and flourishes. Third thing I think could be to have rapid prototyping ecosystem place. For that, we need to open doors for industry to come in, to create avenues like Idea Labs. See, every institution has roughly 1,000 to few thousand students. Some of them have their parents coming from industry who may be running some businesses. We can reach out to them for the CSR. And through that, we can create these innovation hubs, like, the Idea Labs or something like T-Hub at every level. So every, 50 kilometer, 100 kilometer, we have one ecosystem like T-Hub, where anyone coming up with an idea can, come and, work around that, pivot it. And because it's not a one-time process. There was an interesting book I read, and I actually not read. It was suggested by one of the faculties, and I think it's banned, which has to do with how policy shapes in China. And I came to know about this 10 years back in 2014, where the monarchy in China tells the MSMEs that if you don't innovate every 2 years, we'll cancel your license. So if industry becomes complacent, right, with their inventions or patents and all, they will not come to academia. And that's the difference between the mindset between Indian and foreign entities. Why they are investing in research? Because that's where patents are. That's where publications are.
But
that's
I think
where
there is a
innovations
change
are.
happening, Umesh, right? We are now looking at research. I think the focus is now getting there.
Absolutely, but I'm not happy with the way MSMEs are doing things. I'm like, I don't know how many MSMEs are investing in research or filing new patents or coming up with new designs or reaching out to new market for that matter with their own product.
In fact, it's interesting you say this. I mean, if you were to ask me, I personally feel how many MSMEs are actually even looking and trying to get deeper into the Indian market itself.
Right.
We've just...
Right. For example, I give this example of Kolhapuri chappal. It's a great product,
Right.
long lasting maybe.
Right.
How many people wear Kolhapuri chappal beyond Maharashtra? Or have they ideated some new designs using the same material, which can appeal to other communities or different demographies which might be similar to theirs. So this is just an example, but there are many such solutions which exist within the ecosystem, which can have newer markets also. I mean, like for MSME, I'm not saying innovate with product. Innovate with demography as well. Go to a newer, larger demography where you can sell your products.
True. Can you share an example of a micro innovation that you believe could have a macro impact on the startup ecosystem if it's widely adopted?
Okay. I recently came. I'm like, because I'm not able to recollect all the examples now. But a recent example was of a guy. I was in Pune. He refit. He's into retrofitting electric ecosystem in the existing petrol two-wheelers.
Whoa. Uh-huh.
Within 60,000, he does that.
Okay.
So he converts your petrol vehicle into EV within 2 hours.
Can you imagine the macro impact of that?
It's like, you have bought an Activa which has a life of maybe 10 years, 10 odd years, for example. You have two-wheeler. Now, suddenly there is a policy for EV, right?
Yeah.
And now everyone is trying to buy an EV. But here's this guy who is retrofit, and he has 140 plus clients already.
That is innovation.
And the kind of confidence he had in his idea was outstanding. I was blown away with his energy. I mean, like, he's talking about reaching out to 1% of the whole, EV ecosystem.
That's just.
And he says that with that itself, I'll become a multi-millionaire. So, having said that, like, let's not talk about the money, but the problem which he is trying to solve, right?
Exactly.
The way
I was about to say
address
that.
it.
Yeah. I mean,
It's amazing. The thought process of the young mind is so amazing. So, yeah.
So, what role should community forums and government platforms play in integrating STEAM with startup mentorship?
Okay. I think I have given some examples related to community earlier, where I talked about having cultural programs with technical feel and touch, where students can, take part in competitions at societal level. So I'll give an example. When we did a startup, we had a soccer match played with robots developed by students in a fun fair at a society.
Mm-hmm.
So you remember the bal divas we used to have?
Yes.
And there used to be a string and you cannot touch it, so it will beep or a light will come. It was a good tool to propagate, and students used to make it. And it was a great platform for students to actually try out entrepreneurship. Like fun fairs are a great what you can say, old school method to propagate entrepreneurship. You have a team, you have a fund, you come up with an idea, and you make sure you make money out of it. So STEAM education, for that, I think technology base is very important. I'm sad to say, in India, we still have, whenever I go home, I only see Indian Idol and Dance India Dance. Every day I go home, I am seeing some 16th season, 18th season. I have PhD in dance, but I cannot dance just by looking at it. I'm just saying it. I'm like, where are the channels which propagate technology and entrepreneurship? When I did startup, I was reading about First Robotics, which was a program run by NASA. And you won't believe I wrote a letter to ISRO to collaborate with our startup. So we can propagate STEM education in school, and no one will say no to ISRO. So you have a program where you can self-fund your, space missions by making money, by introducing STEM learning models in all schools and colleges across the country. And this is way back in 2010. So that did not happen. Maybe I did not hear anything from them. But, it is really important to engage the students at a various level without them knowing that, it is STEM or arts or what. Because students' mind is something which you can pivot. You can engage them in activity which at early stage make them do multiple things. Right? And I think art is a platform where you can connect STEM. Like right now as we speak, right? We are talking on a mic. But there is understanding of how our vocal cords work, or the mic, how it receives the volume the voice coming from our mouth, and then so it's a work of art, though it's a technological product. So community forums play a very important role at societal level, accepting that technology is something which we need to inculcate. With a country like India, which manufactures engineers like anything, it's high time we start conducting activities, and ACIC, I think Atal Community Incubate forums is something of that sort, which is coming up. And the other part which you mentioned was
Uh, more about how can community forums and government platforms play a role in integrating STEAM with startup mentorship?
right. So government platforms, I think uh, Startup India, I think can play a role in this. Where we, I think through Atal Innovation Mission, we have done a bit of it. To reach out to institutions in tier 2, tier 3 cities, establishing the ATL labs,
Hmm.
having ACIC in place, but giving them the problem statements. We need someone, like as you mentioned, the government should be a person to nudge them.
Hmm.
That's where I think they can play a very pivotal role to give problem statements which are related to that community, to that region, through which, using the STEM tools, they can come up with solutions and pivot their, ideas.
Let's wrap up this segment with a two-part question. First, is there a case for creating a more dynamic and flexible regulatory framework in education, specifically to foster innovation? And I want to see how you respond to this. If you had the power to modify one policy today that would impact startups emerging from educational institutions, what would it be?
That's an interesting question. So when you talk about regulatory framework, you talk about how the academia is provided the
Yes.
courses to
Mhm.
run and all, like
Mhm.
the way
Yeah.
AICTE does it.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, so you're talking about a ecosystem where we, have a better and dynamic.
Yeah.
Definitely, there's a need for that. I think the Ministry of Education Innovation Cell, part of AICTE, is trying to do it. So though it does not fall under AICTE directly, I mean, it's part of AICTE, but it has a different name. But it's part of the regulatory framework,
Okay.
which is currently existing. I think what we need to think of is how we grade the students, or really we need to think about how we are utilizing the human resources and providing them that feedback of what their value or worth is. Because giving some grades, giving some numbers today does not make sense. I mean, like every other student gets 100 on 100 today. How you differentiate that? It's a big problem, right? Even if these are on personal road, right? So definitely there's a big need to have a dynamic framework around it, which celebrates every person. I mean, like any student who comes from different, skill sets, and we have always undermined the skills. That's why a lot of skill universities are coming in today. Right, which we have always looked up to grades and all, and that's why Indians were not employable as per certain reports. So today we are trying to change that. So already things have started working in that era, that area. And talking about the second question, which was if I had the power to change one policy. So this
At the
policy
stroke of a pen.
at the stroke of a pen. I don't know whether it's part of the policy or not, but I really think that we need to, as I gave that example, right, the students getting employed before they get the go through that curricula. So we shape them better. And they know where they are going to lead into. As of now, the students in academia are having no clue what they want to land up into. So if they have that opportunity to know whether they want to, they have something in hand, which will allow them to pivot. That, okay, I can try out something different. So I will look up to, making sure that every student, is given that opportunity to pursue their dreams, irrespective of, what we can say, what domain they come from.
Hmm.
And because it's a very difficult question to answer, and it cannot be done at one go. I'm like, I understand, because there are too many things, like, because doing a startup is not only about academia and government. It has to do also with family. So why families don't support entrepreneurship? Because they want, they have commitments, they have responsibilities. I met a lot of students who are good at, maybe I think they have those skills in them. Maybe the faculties think they have skills in them, but family does not.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it has to do with many things. But definitely I would like to, have a policy document where we, welcome or mention that failures are, a stepping stone. It's not going to define who you are forever.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think we can uh, deal it that way.
All right. With that, we come to the end of the first segment, which is what matters. All right, Umesh. So we get to the next segment, what's brewing. And what's brewing is about emerging trends, current challenges, and innovative ideas which are shaping the future. So the first part of what's brewing will be the new age Indian startups. There's a lot of talk about, buzz about Indian startups, right? First and foremost questions is what are some of the biggest challenges Indian startups face today? And do you believe that mentorship programs can address them?
Absolutely. Mentoring is next to startup education.
Mhm.
I think more than startup education, India needs good mentoring and handholding.
Mhm. Mhm.
Being a mentor myself with NEN, CII, CIS, Atal Innovation Mission, a few of the cells in the country, I have seen that mentoring plays a very pivotal role. And some of the students have done really well with taking feedback from, my personal endeavors. So mentoring is really important, but the challenge part of it, right? Why mentoring is important is because students today are disconnected with what is anticipated in the market. First,
Mhm.
uh, as per CB Insights, I'm like, maximum startups fail because there was no need for that product.
All right.
So students start with the notion and the bias. We have 32 plus biases. So students start with the notion that, okay, this is the problem, I will try to solve it. But they never approach, the market. They don't go and interact with their user base. Many of the academic startups try to convert their final year projects into a startup,
Hmm.
which is a problem. Why? Because you're working on some technology where you haven't interacted with the end user. It's not need based. So now you're trying to push it, and in that process you're lost. The other part of it which I face is I've seen a lot of demo sessions, and I've invited a lot of investors for these meetups which we do. And in that, what I've seen is this problem of cheap products.
Okay.
So students think that if the product is cheap, it will sell better. And that's why they are always in the comparative mode with existing products with pricing,
Hmm.
not with product.
Hmm.
So they will not talk about how better is your product. They will say we are selling it cheap. So I'll give an example where one of the guy was pitching, and he said that he is competing with Zomato. And he said that Zomato charges 30% commission and will charge only 2%. So the question was obviously, what will you do with that 2%? How will you exist or coexist in that market which is already there? So this notion, right, needs to go out of the mind of the students, that don't think of making cheap products. Make the products first, the best products, and then think about the pricing.
True. True.
Otherwise, you are not going to see the day of the light.
Absolutely.
Right. So these are few notions. These are few of the aspects which I have seen closely within the ecosystem, and I think there is a dire need for mentors to handle students in that sense. Not only that, I think we need technical mentoring.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
obviously faculties in academia have limited knowledge to new age technologies, where I think corporates or industry can come in,
Hmm.
who have played with new technologies,
Hmm.
who are well aware how those technologies can help their product succeed. So business mentoring and technology mentoring are these two different aspects, and I think they need to go hand in hand to support the student.
If this is not a curveball, but I do need to ask you this question. Uh, what do you think are the biggest blind spots in the startup ecosystem today that no one seems to be talking about?
In terms of challenges,
Mhm.
or
Just blind spots. Nobody's talking about it.
nobody is talking about it. I think we have a good ecosystem of incubation centers already in place.
Hmm.
As per Startup India portal itself, 1,269 incubation centers. It's a huge number for a country like India. And obviously, as we speak, there are more being created. So that hand holding, right, which is required, and the kind of jobs which it has created itself is a game changer. Other part of it is the content economy, as we're speaking on a podcast, right? This was not existing 4 or 5 years back, but suddenly it has, shaped into a all new game. So for me, the blind spots are the ones which are not talked about. Like, few institutions are filing patents, they don't celebrate it. There are no case studies available.
Hmm.
Few institutions which have done tech transfer, maybe successfully, maybe they have earned few crores or few lakhs, which are not celebrated. I'm like, in academia, we need to celebrate these milestones because
What can be done, Umesh, to make them celebrate? Do you think that? Do you think that maybe mentors, policymakers, the government itself should step in and probably encourage them to do this?
absolutely, I think UGC has taken one step to award the top 10 research PhDs
Mm-hmm.
in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So something like that can be done where we can, validate the patents or the tech commercialization and bring, not only celebrating, we can have one portal where we talk about these cases. Since long, we have been using Harvard business cases to teach our management students. We have many cases of our own, which are not in the purview. So I always tell academicians to write a 2-pager about what tech transfer happened and how did it got commercialized. Tell us in terms of story, because engineers are good in teaching technology and all that stuff, but they are bad at storytelling. The academia is missing a big time in that. So I always recommend also.
And that's why we are here to tell those stories.
Absolutely. And it's a need of the hour for each college also to have a recording studio. Like I worked with ISB for a while, and they have a brilliant studio setup. Any guest coming to their place, they record. They make it mandatory that they need to come to the studio and have a bit of discussion, which gives the insights about it, as well as it helps them to market themselves. So that is really important. And being a content economy as a country, I think it is really important to share those stories. And at a given point, we have so many institutions, and some of them have brilliant studios. I was in Kolhapur, and one of the studio to that institute was provided by Erasmus.
Wow.
Yeah, for an entity providing you a complete studio to record your lectures, and I was just out of the I never thought in tier 2 like city like Kolhapur I will be able to see something like that. So that is really important, that more than celebration, it's more, see, it will be celebrated when it reaches masses. And we, at a nutshell, as a culture, as a country, have been developed on stories. You talk about Ramayana, you talk about Mahabharata, talk about Upanishad, you talk about Vedas, everything was delivered through mouth by storytelling, right? So it's really important to celebrate it. Once we start doing it, right, I think others will dive in. As of now, everything is happening in silos. And when I interact with academicians on common platform where we have all departments together, I've taken many sessions to talk about these challenges in front of them. And I get few ideas from them. And I said, is everyone aware? And most of the time, the answer is no. So within them, within that institution, one organization itself, that information has not flourished. So imagine across India. So if through this podcast, I think, people can take those lessons that please make sure that you record those celebration, talk about those case studies, and broadcast it as much as possible to the students, to their families, and everyone.
Um, I actually have two-part questions here. One is sustainability. To some, it's still a buzzword, but I think to me, the basic of sustainability, basic definition of sustainability is to live a sustainable living. Just how do you live a simple, sustainable lifestyle? So my question is, one is, how are startups increasingly getting focused, or are they getting focused on sustainable practices? One. And the other is, how does the startup ecosystem today in India, how do they balance growth with societal impact? And do you believe that this balance at this point of time is skewed only towards growth and not towards the other side?
So there are three questions.
There too.
There too?
Yeah.
So sustainability for me is a big black box. Students are confused. I mean, like, sustainability, when you talk about, is this the SDG which we are talking about, or business sustainability? Right? So if you talk about SDGs, right, that's a different ball game. If you talk about business sustainability, which an entrepreneur should focus on, it's a different thing altogether. And I think there should be a clear line drawn and students made aware as to, what you need to focus on. This is my personal, notion that sustainable products are, there are great products in the ecosystem which are sustainable in nature. If you talk about just the products related to SDGs, but they are not marketed well. And there are few corporates, I would not name them, who came in to replace our sustainable products and again created their own products, and now they are selling those same again, the old sustainable product practices which we had. And I will not name the brand, but it has to do with toothpaste, like when we were using charcoal or when we were using salt, right? So we are again coming back to using charcoal and salt in our toothpaste. So for over 150 years, we were fooled as to what practices. We were sustainable as a society. We are sustainable as society. We are not USA, where 25% of the global power consumption is by 5% of the global population. We are at the bottom of the pyramid when we talk about the energy consumed by the huge population which we have. We are the most sustainable ecosystem. Having said that, I think the focus should be towards sustainability of businesses. Because China has achieved great strides over the period of time to make their GDP grow, where there was no talk of sustainability in terms of global, ecosystem. Now, when India is trying to grow, a lot of things have been pushed upon us with respect to sustainability. We need to have sustainable practices. There need to be XYZ policies in place. You cannot do XYZ thing. How does a country grow in terms of GDP? How do we increase our GDP per capita?
I understand. that China has grown.
No, I'm not talking about having a development like China.
No, I understand.
Hmm.
But I think we live in a world where if you just look at it, and this is personally speaking, if we are not mindful of our environment, our planet, the other day, I'm part of a movie club, and we were a part of this. We had a two-part movie which was hosted by our producer and of the studio, and he also owns the studio. Pretty much, we were discussing, and the two-part movies were kind of docudramas about environment, and we were having this discussion where we said, yes, growth is important.
Mhm.
For sure, it's very important. But at the same time, we have to be also mindful of our environment.
Absolutely. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm coming to. We had always been sustainable as a community. There were few things which were pushed upon us. And given that over the period of time, with such a huge population, it is difficult for us to not think sustainable businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really important to have sustainable businesses. If you see recently, Ajay Banga sir from the World Bank talked about in future there will be not many jobs available, and that will, what we can say, destabilize societies. Government cannot give these many jobs. None of the government in the world can give these many jobs. 800 million jobs he's talking about, right? Which has to come up from growing economies. The whole world is depleting. I mean, like the economy is going down.
True.
It's stagnant. We are the ones which are growing. We are the ones who can
Absolutely.
create those jobs.
Absolutely.
And if we don't think sustainable ways of running business due to these issues, obviously these need to be catered to. I'm not saying don't talk about the government, environment. I'm not saying talk about depleting all the resources we have, the natural resources. But I'm saying don't get bogged down with this thought process and don't think of sustainable ways of growing. Yes, business sustainability should be the criteria to move forward for a country like India as of now. Why? Because we have largest population. Why? If we talk about the destabilization of society, it will impact us first. And we are talking about this next 5, 10, 15, 20 odd years. So we need to think of those sustainable startups coming in, executing their ideas and moving ahead. Having said that, need to balance out with the practices which support sustainable development goals.
How do you see the ratio today? Do you think the balance is more skewed towards growth at this point?
I think it's more to the existing businesses which are to do with the unsustainable or unethical practices with respect to SDGs. Startups are quite young. They are still trying to understand where they are putting their leg into. So I cannot say that startups are impacting anything to do with SDGs. It's the existing businesses, thriving businesses which are to do. So we need to bring ethical practices for them, stricter rules, stricter policies, stricter compensation for that matter.
All right. So we come to the final part of the second segment, What's Brewing. And this is about collaboration across borders. I think it's important. So,
and my favorite part.
Thank you. So, what are the benefits and challenges of Indian startups collaborating with international institutions? And if you could bridge gaps between Indian startups and international investors, what fundamental challenges might we encounter and how can they be overcome?
Okay. The first question was the benefits and the disadvantages. Let me answer it in a different way. So I hope you are aware about the concept of country of origin, which was impacted to our country in a big way. And we have seen that during the corona vaccine. We were the early ones to come up with a vaccine, but many of the Western world did not anticipate or took our vaccine with the thought process or the egoistic mindset that how can we buy a vaccine from country like India, which is a problem. for the product manufacturer or the people who are problem solving within the country. As we speak, it is really important that the products which we are making reach out to the global audience. The advantage of collaborating with international network or the market to come up with solutions is very important as of now. Why? Let's talk about South Africa. It's an emerging economy. We have been there, done that. For us to take our products and reach out to that market should not be a problem. It will require a bit of pivot. For example, Bajaj Boxer, which was released, it did not had a market in India, but it did well in South Africa. So it's really important to have a minute-to-minute update what's happening across border. And here I would like to give an example of GIZ. It's a German entity which is established in all the countries across the world, which not only advocates policy in that country, but has minute-to-minute update what's going on in that country in terms of new startups, in terms of new products, in terms of new policies. It helps to people in Germany go back and work around things to come up with better solutions. 50% of the German population is somewhere connected to export-import, having harbors like Hamburg. So it's really important for us to have that information. Collaboration is okay. We have German Indo Startup Exchange Program. We have Indo-Israel Startup Exchange Program. Similarly, we have multiple plethora of activities between Russia, China, and maybe like USA for that matter. But we don't have that information about the market. We don't have the information about the taste. And we don't advocate policy. So to create that market, we need to be sitting on that same table to advocate the policy and talk about the opportunities which India brings. I think now we are in that place where we can do that as a country with a strong foreign policy and soft diplomacy which we have. So if that is in place, I think it's a win-win situation. There is no disadvantage in working with foreign entity. I don't see any disadvantage. It's always about learning. We are learning together. Even if we are co-creating something, it's great. The second question was about...
if you could bridge gaps between Indian startups and international investors, what fundamental challenges might we encounter?
Right. So talking about the second question, I think already a lot of things are happening in that space. Institutes like IITs have been a hub for investors and researchers from across border to come and buy their product and invest in those ideas. But here's the thing. I think government can play a very pivotal role. Most of the unicorns in India have funding from China. In fact, China has been always ahead the curve to file patents in new technologies. Talking about Gen AI, I think they have filed 10,000 patents. We are still learning about Gen AI.
10,000 patents on Gen AI?
Top 10 companies from China have filed around 10,000, roughly.
Wow.
Right? So, and 17 lakh patents have been filed by China. So, it's a staggering number. And I think it has to do with monarchy thought process. Because it's push-driven more than intrinsic. So as I mentioned, right, innovate or, perish.
True.
That is the thought process. And for that, if you see even a small setup, SME or a small business owner in China has a TikTok account or Instagram account and they showcase their product and with their contact number and broadcast what they are trying to do, which we are missing in the country. We don't have small business owners doing that or inviting people across border to try out their products or maybe courier those products across to them to try it out for a larger orders.
Do you feel that while we speak a lot, especially with this government in the last decade or so, we speak a lot about ease of business, ease of doing business. Are we still there yet?
We are there. I think government is doing tremendous. If you ask me, I was not part of the government 6 months back, but I'm currently part of the government. And Believe me, I'm not saying this because I'm part of the government. The kind of initiatives which I talked about, right? It's humongous. The kind of support system government is providing for innovation in academia is...
So there's not enough education about it. People need
No,
to
I
know a
think,
lot more.
as I said, right, storytelling, or people are not able to communicate. Maybe there's a gap for people to communicate in their language. Maybe those platforms are not created where they can talk about. So TikTok is created by China, which is a platform utilized by their small business units to market their product. So the platform is created and they are selling their products on that. Right? How many small business units in India are utilizing Instagram or any other platform? We had a Coup platform which was competitor to Twitter. I think it's nowhere now. So we need to have those social platforms where, those products can be marketed. We are doing brilliant thing, some of the MSMEs and all, but that personal reach which is there, right? Today, you go on Instagram, you'll find a reel where, some Chinese person is talking about, you find this product in this city. You find this product in XYZ other city. So if you want to buy product, contact me, or, so that approach, that confidence needs to come. And I think that's where we are missing out on, to showcase what we truly are. And I don't know what is that we are hesitant about in academia also. Right. So, yeah.
So here is a two-part question I have for you before we wrap up this segment. What lessons can India learn from successful startup ecosystems abroad? And what's that one cultural or structural aspect of India's startup ecosystem that other countries could learn from?
That's a great question. So in my TED Talk, India from a startup nation to unicorn nation, I talk about the three aspects for what we can learn from other nations. And one thing which I already mentioned is rapid prototyping, which should be localized.
Yes.
Inventor should not have to run places to prototype his idea. So that accessibility should be there. Second, market access. Having that information minute to minute, which country needs what. So we can provide them that. See, it's not about only creating innovative products. It's just that we can also reach out to the need when the demand is created. So if we are making XYZ thing, if there is an immediate need, even if we are selling that or exporting that to them, it's helping our GDP, it's helping our economy, and new businesses can be created in that space as well. Third part of it is, I think it is time for us to be good storytellers. We do good things, but we don't talk about it. I don't know what is that lacuna in our mindset. So I think, the way Tatas do it, every employee is a good storyteller. Harish Bhatt has written so many books, beautiful books on Tata. And every other post on LinkedIn by, any employee on from Tata, you will see like, wow, you never knew about that part of the story. So even government does it. Even government, like I gave the example of two people from different states coming together through Smart India Hackathon and doing something good, becoming a problem solver. So these stories need to be narrated. We need to learn. And I think we need to unlearn and then relearn these aspects. Having said that, so these are the three things. I think from cultural aspect of India, what world can learn is a lot many things. I cannot say one, but because you have asked one aspect, I think it could be to have, sustainability at the core of it. We have been sustainable through and through. So how you can have that part, playing. So we don't create CO2 emissions compared to the world. From our eating habits to cooking habits to whatever you talk about. In fact, celebrations of our festivities, right? We have been sustainable in those means. So sustainability has been our, core forte. That I think the world can learn. Because if you talk about USA, when I gave this example of 5% people utilizing 25% of the power, look at their bikes.
Hmm.
The number of cc's they have is never ending zeros.
True.
And we do things in small, right? Look at our Mars mission.
And I think one more thing which they can truly learn from us is the digital transformation which has taken place in India. I mean, take the example of UPI.
Look at the trust which 8.45 billion people have on each other.
Yes.
So that's a big asset we have today,
True.
right?
True.
Which Germans don't do,
Hmm.
which I think US also does not do. The adoption rate of digital economy is nowhere. For a small population like Germany. I mean, like, they're 8-9 crore. We are 1.5 billion. We are able to do it seamlessly, and it's a great case study for them. But the example of the landing on the southern pole of
True.
and hoisting a flag over there with a budget of compared to Interstellar, I think there was a comparison. I don't know the numbers. Help me with that. But isn't that sustainable?
Sure.
One of the largest organizations, which is the most innovative organization in the country, ISRO, executing that feat. I think NASA could have also thought of.
Yeah, in fact, they commended.
No, they commended, but do they practice that?
Yeah. All right, Umesh. So we start with the final segment, rapid fire. And we have two parts to it. The fun and interactive part, let me begin with that. If you were to start your own startup tomorrow, what problem would it solve?
Definitely, it would be something related to health. I think the way we are living today and thriving today, there's so many problems. Government has to today take initiatives to support, below the poverty line or community to have IVFs. Like, they're supporting those schemes. So what are the reasons? Because we have unhealthy methods of living today. So anything and everything to do with health will be a need of the hour. So that will be the sector I'll stick to.
Awesome. I thought that was the safest answer too. Which book or resource do you recommend most to aspiring founders?
Apart from my books,
you can slide that in.
The Fun of Being in a Startup Chanakya, and Startup Theories, Examples and Activities. One talks about the knowledge, one talks about the skills, one talks about the attitude. So the Fun of Being in a Startup is more about the skills part of it. Startup Theories, Examples, Activities is more about the knowledge, because there are n number of people who have researched about various attributes what makes up an entrepreneur. So it talks about that. And third is that Chanakyan thought process, how to execute things. But having said that, what really matters is how you look at things. And when I did my startup, I was really motivated by this book called Whatever You Think the Opposite, by Paul Arden. He was working with Saatchi and Saatchi, USA. The other two books to fellow inventors and startup founders is Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen and Think Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. So these are two must-read books because it talks about the technology life cycle and how things are shaping. So if you're getting into the product, you need to know the market dynamics.
Absolutely.
And how things are going to shape. So you cannot get stuck over there.
All right. What's that one unconventional skill you think every startup founder should learn?
Unconventional? How do you
Something which is not conventional. Anything unconventional.
Does networking falls under it?
No, that's a conventional skill.
Unconventional. I mean, I don't have any example. I'm like, can you give some examples?
And I'm not supposed to answer that. Think about something which a startup founder should do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And something which probably is out of the box. So unconventional would be something out of the box.
I think most of those things fall under those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right. So we'll skip this question.
Yeah.
If you could create a new holiday celebrating innovation, what would it be called?
Interesting. I think we already have one National Startup Day on 16th, which is initiated by Honorable Prime Minister.
Mhm.
And there is plethora of activities happening around. It would be called, I'm like Dr. Kalam, Innovation Day, something
Okay.
like that.
I know you
Because-
are inspired by him a lot.
Absolutely.
The whole
I'm like-
nation is.
Yeah. And the way he brought people to STEM.
Hmm.
And I have a anecdote. I have a case study for that because he was the inspiration for our startup, and we connected a lot of students to STEM through our initiative. So the team which participated in one of the early activities was School Robotic Championship, which we organized for a state of Maharashtra. The people who won in that went to National Robotic Championship, which happens in IIT Bombay, and they won both. And this particular student went on to do BTech from IIT Bombay, and then currently is pursuing PhD from Purdue University. So somewhere, that motion, your startup may exist or not, or whatever you did to inspire people or connect the dots makes a difference. So Dr. Kalam connected a lot of students to get into STEM education. And I think that would be a suitable way to give him those credits. And I had an opportunity to meet him as well.
What was the funniest or quirkiest idea for a startup you have ever come across?
So this was while we were registering our startup.
Mhm.
I haven't come across many startup ideas, the one which you are talking about. But when we went to register with our CA, he knew that we were to do something with robotics and STEM education. But I don't know how out of the blue he had this idea that why don't we get into sex toys? And I was like, we are here for STEM education. You get it? And he was talking about, no, there's a huge market. Why you don't think about it? And I'm like, no. So, I don't know. I'm like, why he thought about it or not. But this was his, as a CA, he maybe looked at the market and the, opportunity looming around.
Okay. If your work had a theme song, what would it be?
It would be Azadiya from the movie Udan, composed by Amit Trivedi. I really love that song. And I have also written a poem around it, which goes on in my head while I'm into that zone. So can I narrate that?
Sure, if you can.
So it goes something like this. Walk alone if you must. Keep walking. You may fall, who doesn't? Keep walking. They will stop you, won't they? Just keep walking. Did you reach your goal? No, keep walking. When people leave you, keep walking. Everything will make sense. Keep walking. If you think your path is lost, remember you have just created one.
Wonderful. That is really inspirational. What's the most unusual place where you've had a great startup idea come to you?
Obviously, I have interacted with so many founders, and it has to be the bathroom. Yeah, I met one of the startup founders. She has a product related to it, and she's started a book to do something with startup ideas coming in bathroom.
Okay.
It's an unfinished product, but yeah, I think that's a one place where you feel disconnected from everyone, and you are able to. I don't know why the ideas come over there.
Well, okay. We go to the next part of rapid fire,
Yeah.
which is this or that. Mentor or lifelong learner? Which role do you believe ultimately defines a successful leader in the startup system?
I think lifelong learner. Mentoring does not teach you anything. And I always tell students to have a process like listening, reading, writing, and then speaking. So if you listen well, you are empathetical. You know more stories, you know more people, you know what's going around you. So lifelong learning, I think when you're learning, you are in that zone of listening or reading. So for me, yes, lifelong learning over mentoring.
Um, this could be tricky. EdTech revolution or health tech transformation? Which sector do you feel India's most impactful game changer will be in the next decade?
I think it has to be health.
Hmm?
Yes, it has to be health. Why? Because if you're healthy, you can do anything. The way things are shaping up, I think we don't are giving enough time to focus on our health.
Mhm.
And healthy mind can, what we can say, function better. So I think that will be the priority.
Mhm. Bootstrap or seek funding early? Which path do you believe cultivates resilience in entrepreneurs?
It has to be bootstrap.
Mhm.
Initially, if you don't have traction. So one of the competitors during our startup days was incubated in Sine, IIT Bombay.
Mhm.
They were there for 8-9 years.
Mhm.
So being there, does not, what we can say, it's not a good idea for any startup to be there for such a long period of time. So you need to have traction, you need to be bootstrap. It helps you to scale better. Early funding makes you complacent.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. And it depends from the startup idea to idea. Depends on the amount required to execute it. If you are making an e-commerce platform, which, internet is free, you need to have some, online tools to register your website and all,
Mhm.
aggregator-based startups. So you don't need a large amount of fund. But if you are into manufacturing, obviously you need a good fund to pivot your idea for your product or MVP. So in that sense, it will be there. But I think bootstrapping is a good way to go.
Self-taught skills or structured learning?
For entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
I think self-taught skills, and that's why I say students to start early from first year onwards to pivot their ideas. So they have multiple episodes of experiences, how to do it. And then by the time they are in third or fourth year, they can really lift off.
Engage with students or industry veterans? Who, in your experience, brings fresher ideas and deeper challenges to the innovation table?
It's a difficult to answer. Depends on which industry these people have worked in
Hmm.
or which background the students are.
If you were to just look at
No, it will be the students then, because their approach is different. Maybe their execution lacks. For execution, they might be better. But students looking at the new, aspects, they have a better understanding or they come up with innovative ideas.
long hours or streamlined efficiencies? Does startup success come from hustle or from optimizing every moment?
So it has to be like the bowling alley.
Mhm.
You have to focus on one aspect. Without focused approach, you cannot achieve. If you try to do too many things early, you get lost in all those. We have been there. So I can say from that personal experience, focus and then you can, it has to be a focused approach.
Mhm. Okay, this one is a personal question of mine.
Mhm.
Pushing tech boundaries or prioritizing user needs? What ultimately drives innovation? Tech breakthroughs or human centered solutions?
Human-centered solutions, without doubt. You have to sit with your customers to understand them better. Technology does not matter. You talk about AI, ML today, these are fancy words.
Hmm.
Finally, we are dealing with people.
Yes.
And people approach is always the best.
Mhm.
There is so many digital tools available still today. During elections, all politicians are on ground.
Yes.
That's a great example. The people who are going to run this country are connecting with the local people. So startups should definitely go and connect with the last mile, understand the need. Even if they are solving a problem for existing products or services, By connecting with the end user, you can come across some challenges which they have missed around, and you can still have a USP around it, which you can, So Ola, Uber was there, still Rapido exists. So you need to find that niche, and create that scope for you.
All right. Since you work with the government now, here's a question: policies with impact or regulations with flexibility? Which is more conducive to a thriving startup culture in India?
I think there should be a balance of both.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot go without saying that you need impactful policies. And I think policies should be made again with that, end user kind of an approach, user centric approach. We cannot create it in silos. So we need to reach out to the last mile to understand their needs, to come up with policies which suits all, or at least tries to, match a need of 70 to 80% of the people we are addressing. And definitely there should be flexibility in the regulatory framework, which, accommodates everyone and gives an opportunity to learn and grow for people or students coming with different needs. Not everyone in academia is for job. Not everyone in academia is for higher study. Not everyone is here for only startups. So in a classroom setting, the most difficult job today is of a teacher to, match those needs and cater to those. Like we go to McDonald's and, there's a beautiful question. What do you like to have today? That option should be available with the students, that some kind of a, opportunity where they get what they need.
All right. The final question of the rapid fire question and of the podcast: should we emulate proven models or do we pioneer new paths? Is it more strategic for Indian startups to build on tested concepts or to dive into fresh experiments?
It's an interesting question, and I'm glad you have asked this question. And I'm sad why it's coming at the end, because so we had one of the best ecosystems in the world. We were not called Soni ki chidiya for a reason. I mean, like, just for the sake of it. We were called Soni ki chidiya for a reason, because we had those practices in place. Maybe due to colonization, things have changed. But it's not hard and fast. We can always go back and take those lessons and rework around it. And we have great case studies for that available. We have great teachers who have given us those lessons. The Western world just repackages those and gives us back to us. So there is nothing like fresh thing which we want to adopt. There is nothing like what we have done in the past we want to discard. I think we just need to touch back to our roots. Once we touch to our roots, all the answers lie over there. We just need to utilize those well and bring those into the mainstream again. If we are able to do that, we'll be answering many of the problems which we are facing today.
All right, Umesh, that was an interesting 2 hours of our podcast. Thank you so much for your time. And I think a lot of us need to introspect. And as you rightly said, go back to our roots, because India has been sustainable for a very long time, has been practicing sustainability for a very long time.
Yeah, to add, if we can add to that, how many countries still are connected to those roots?
Yes.
Right. Whatever ecosystem which we created still exist. We have those identities which we can, easily see around, which most of the world has lost. So that makes us the most resilient country in the world without
Absolutely
being someone who attacked other nations and maintaining that identity and fighting hard. So I think it's not what world can teach us. It's always, or we can say humbly, it's what the world can learn from us.
Absolutely. And I think we truly embody the spirit and the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is one family.
Yes.
So thank you, Umesh, for your time, and look forward to many more such conversations.
Thank you so much, Santoshi, for having me. It was a great honor to be here to share my insights and interesting questions which you had for me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Between Us podcast. The producer is Santosh Kumar, and the associate producer is Samyak Kamble. The Between Us podcast uploads episodes weekly, and we'll see you next time.